You are standing in the middle of Warsaw, Poland. It is September 19th, 1940. The air is thick with fear. Nazi soldiers are sweeping, arresting anyone they see on the street. Their goal today is 2,000 civilians. Look around. People are fleeing, ducking into dark alleys, kneeling to beg for mercy. But amidst the chaotic crowd, one man walks. He doesn't run. He doesn't hide. He walks straight toward the gun barrels, deliberately creating a scene to be noticed. He looks the SS soldier in the eye, slowing down so they cannot help but arrest him. His name is Witold Pilecki, a cavalry officer, a husband, a father of two small children waiting for dinner at home. He just acted, an act no human in history had ever done, and perhaps never will again. He volunteered to enter Auschwitz prison, not as a guard, but as a prisoner. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we will decode a truly extraordinary story, the most painful yet heroic story of the 20th century, the story of a man who lived 947 days in hell, building a secret army under the SS's noses, sending the first detailed reports of the Holocaust to the world, then receiving an end no one could imagine. Why was a national hero executed by his own country and erased from history for years? Let's dive deep into the file of Witold Pilecki, prisoner number 4859. To understand why he made that crazy decision, we must go back in time to his roots. Witold Pilecki was born in 1901 in Olonets, a frozen Russian town, deep in the Russian Empire, over 1,000 kilometers from the Polish border. His family wasn't there by choice or for fun. His grandfather joined the 1863 Polish uprising against Russia. The price was confiscation of all property, land, and exile to Siberia. Pilecki grew up with stories of sacrifice, of ancestors who gave everything for a nation that didn't even exist then. Poland then was just a ghost nation, a memory torn apart by empires. But in 1918, a miracle finally happened. World War I ended, empires collapsed, and Poland was reborn. At 17, Pilecki didn't celebrate with parties. He took a gun. He fought German soldiers in Vilnius, then fought the Red Army at age 19 to protect the young nation's independence. By age 20, he was a veteran of two major wars. Then, peace returned, and Pilecki did something very surprising. He became an ordinary man. He married Maria, a primary school teacher, and had two children, Andrei and Zofia. He farmed. He ran the family farm, painted watercolors, and wrote poetry. For 20 years, he lived as a farmer and father, silently waiting for a call he hoped would never come. On September 1st, 1939, that call finally arrived. Nazis invaded. Invading from the west, the Soviet Union attacked from the east. Poland collapsed in weeks. Many officers fled to England or France for asylum. Pilecki did not. He stayed in Warsaw and helped found the secret Polish army, a resistance movement. At this time, gruesome rumors began to spread. The Germans built a concentration camp near Auschwitz, which they called Auschwitz. Political prisoners, intellectuals, and resistance fighters were taken there and never returned. But the problem was, no one knew exactly what was happening inside. Was it a prison, a labor camp, or something much more horrific? The resistance command needed someone to infiltrate inside, someone brave enough to collect info, smart enough to organize resistance, and resilient enough to survive and tell. When the commander looked around the room, everyone was silent. Everyone understood this was a mission into the gates of death. Pilecki raised his hand. Let's stop for a second to reflect. He was 39 years old. He had a happy family. He had given his youth to two wars. He had every reason to refuse. But Pilecki understood a harsh, bitter truth. If no one goes in, the world will remain in darkness forever. And if the world doesn't know, evil is limitless. On September 19th, 1940, with the false identity of Tomasz Serafiński, Pilecki bid farewell to his wife. He spoke very briefly. "Don't try to buy my freedom. Don't try to rescue me. I am going to a very important place." He walked out onto the street and let the German soldiers take him. He couldn't imagine the place he was going would be making every war he had ever fought before look like child's play. The train ride to Auschwitz lasted 2 days and nights. No food, no water, no explanation. When the cattle car doors opened, Pilecki stepped into another world. Later, he wrote this: "I bid farewell to everything I ever knew on this earth to enter something that seemed no longer to belong to it." In September 1940, Auschwitz wasn't yet the industrial death factory we know. No giant gas chambers, no trains of millions of Jews. Then it was mainly a prison for Polish political prisoners, but it was already hell. Prisoners were beaten for looking at guards, beaten for not looking, beaten for walking too slow or too fast. Meals were just thin soup and dry bread crusts, just enough calories to not die immediately, but not enough to be healthy. The average lifespan of a prisoner was 6 weeks. Pilecki was given prisoner number 4859. They shaved his head, put him in striped clothes, and stripped away his human identity. But while most focused only on surviving the day, Pilecki began recruiting members for a resistance network within the first week. Building resistance in a concentration camp sounds impossible. The camp was full of informants, prisoners ready to sell friends for bread. SS guards monitored every move. A small mistake meant immediate execution. Yet Pilecki did it. He organized the network into cells. Each member only knew their direct contact. If one was caught and tortured, they could only give up a few others. The system would survive. He selected extremely carefully: a shared look during roll call, a whispered conversation during hard forced labor. By early 1941, his organization was named ZOW. They had hundreds of members in every corner of the camp, in the kitchen to smuggle food to the hungry, in the hospital to hide sick prisoners from purges, in the records office for transport lists, and in the armory to prepare for a potential uprising. But Pilecki's most important task was information. He needed the truth. Messages were hidden in laundry, in food deliveries, even in the clothes of corpses taken for burial. By October 1940, reports reached Warsaw. From there, it went to London, to the Polish government in exile and British intelligence. The world heard about Auschwitz through the words of prisoner 4859. However, this is when the story takes a dark turn. The world did not listen. Throughout 1941 and 1942, Pilecki witnessed Auschwitz transform into something unprecedented in human history. Birkenau was built with gas chambers. Trains carrying Jews began to arrive. SS doctors stood at the pier, pointing left or right. Left or right, life or death. The elderly, the sick, children, all went right. Right meant death within hours. Pilecki recorded it all. He knew the crematoriums could burn 8,000 corpses daily. He knew the SS turned murder into an efficient industrial process. He sent report after report begging for action. In one report, he wrote, "Prisoners beg the Polish government, for the love of God, to bomb this camp. Even if we must die in that attack, it is still a release compared to current conditions." Imagine that. Prisoners begging to be bombed. That is the level of despair humans can reach. These reports reached London, and Washington, D.C. Allied leaders held evidence of history's greatest crime in their hands. And they chose to do what? Nothing at all. They made excuses that Auschwitz was too deep in enemy territory, inaccurate bombing would kill prisoners. But in 1944, American planes flew directly over to bomb industrial targets just miles away. They had aerial photos of gas chambers and incoming trains. They saw it all, but they chose to prioritize other military targets. An SS soldier once mocked a prisoner. "No one will be left alive to bear witness." And even if someone survives, the world will not believe him. Pilecki was determined to prove him wrong, but he was about to learn an even more bitter truth. The problem wasn't that the world didn't believe him, but the world didn't care. Surviving Auschwitz was a miracle. Pilecki worked in fields in winter without a coat. His fingers cracked and bled from the cold. He once had to insulate the crematorium, hearing the machines run behind him and smelling burning flesh. He worked because stopping meant death. He contracted pneumonia, then typhus. In Auschwitz, the hospital was for purging, not for healing. But his ZOW network saved him. They hid him on lists, swapped medical records, smuggled medicine to him. While average prisoners lasted 6 weeks, Pilecki lasted 947 days. By early 1943, he knew he had to escape. The ZOW network was being discovered and torn apart by the Gestapo. If he stayed, he would be caught, tortured, and might expose the whole organization. Of 800 escape attempts at Auschwitz, fewer than 150 succeeded. Those caught were publicly hanged, but Pilecki had no other choice. He planned to transfer to the camp bakery outside the main fence. On the night of April 26, 1943, during night shift, he and 2 comrades cut phone lines, used a fake key to open the back door, knocked out a guard, and ran. They ran over 100 kilometers through Nazi-occupied territory, moving at night, hiding in forests by day. After a week, Pilecki was free. He spent over 2.5 years in hell. He had over 100 pages of detailed reports, maps, and guard schedules. He believed that now, standing here directly, the world would have to act. But the resistance command in Warsaw said, no. They thought an attack on Auschwitz was impractical. They lacked troops and weapons to face the SS forces at the camp. If they took the camp, they couldn't evacuate tens of thousands of exhausted prisoners. Pilecki argued, he cried, describing the children in gas chambers. But cold military reality won. Pilecki could have given up there. He had done enough for one lifetime. But no. When the Warsaw Uprising erupted in August 1944, he took up arms again. He fought on every street and building, using rifles and homemade grenades against German tanks. In those 63 heroic and tragic days, he saw his city being leveled. When the uprising failed, he was taken prisoner and sent to Germany until the war ended in 1945. Nazi Germany surrendered. The war ended. Pilecki was free, but Poland was not. The Soviet Red Army had moved in. A puppet government was established. Resistance soldiers who fought Nazis were now considered enemies of the new regime. Pilecki could have stayed in the West, safe in England or America, but he chose to return. He infiltrated Poland in late 1945 to collect evidence of communist crimes against the Polish people. And here is the cruelest irony. The same world that ignored his Auschwitz reports now ignored him when he was arrested by his own countrymen. On May 8, 1947, Pilecki was arrested by the secret police and brutally tortured for months. Later, meeting his wife for the last time, he said something that made everyone shudder. Auschwitz was child's play compared to this place. Think about that. A man who survived 947 days in a Nazi slaughterhouse said this torture was worse. The SS tortured him as a number, an enemy. These men tortured him because he loved Poland too much. They wanted names. He didn't say a word. On March 3, 1948, a show trial began. Pilecki was accused of espionage and assassination plots. He wasn't allowed a defense, no witnesses. For his last words, Pilecki stood tall, looked at his accusers, and spoke firmly. I have tried to live my life so that at the final hour I feel more joy than fear. At 9:30 p.m. on May 25, 1948, Witold Pilecki was led to the basement of Mokotów prison. He was executed with a shot to the neck, exactly how the Soviets murdered thousands of Polish officers at Katyn. His body was thrown into an unmarked grave. Its location is still unknown today. The communist regime tried to erase Witold Pilecki from history. For 40 years, his name was forbidden. His story was buried under propaganda. His wife worked as a cleaner. His children grew up labeled enemies of the state. Only after the Iron Curtain fell in 1989 did the truth emerge. So, what do we learn from Witold Pilecki's life? His story isn't just about war's cruelty, but the power of choice. In a world where indifference is the safest way to survive, Pilecki chose to care. In a world where everyone wants to be a victim or bystander, he chose action. Statistics show 1.1 million died at Auschwitz. If the world listened to Pilecki in 1941, how many souls could be saved? We'll never know. But we know that because of him, the truth could not be buried. Pilecki's actions remind us of this. Heroism isn't the absence of fear, but the decision that something is more important than fear. For Pilecki, it was truth and his nation's freedom. If you find this story meaningful, help us spread it by hitting like and subscribe. Share this so Witold Pilecki's name is never forgotten again, because a nation that forgets its heroes is a nation with no future. Before we end, I leave you with a question. If you stood on that Warsaw corner, seeing the trains, knowing what awaited you, would you have the courage to step forward? Witold Pilecki stepped forward. That is why we tell his story today. Thank you for watching. See you in the next journey through history. Never forget the hero of Auschwitz.